catch me howling at the moon. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
Hey everyone, welcome to season 2 of Conversations with MaryJane. This is your host, Jill Franklelli, and I am excited to be back for season 2. Season 1 ended pretty quickly at the end of 420. We did a bunch of videos and had a big Zoom smoke sesh with a bunch of people from Maryland, and it was a blast. And then I just kind of disappeared. So I want to talk about that a little bit and explain and share with you maybe what's happened over the last couple of months since the last time that you saw me on the screen. It's such a special moment in time. We're in a global pandemic. We have a civil rights movement that's amping up and getting bigger and bigger. People are standing up for what's been right for a long time. Protesting is happening, changes are happening quickly. I think as humans, people are understanding the deeper connection we have with one another. I'm learning what it means to be an ally and what all of that entails, and really undoing the systems that I grew up in and understanding how I can use my white privilege to really make a difference this time. And then dealing with all of the emotion that comes with all of that. And so that's the first thing I want to talk about, is kind of the emotion behind it and how it led to, a hiatus. I think I did do an Instagram post. I struggle with depression and anxiety, and I'm pretty open about my mental health. And man, COVID, and I'm not complaining because I'm still alive, but when I couldn't work out every day, when things were different, it created depression. And so I started to just kind of go in a spiral and didn't really want to do much of anything in life. And finally, after some suicidal ideation kind of came to be, snapped me out of it by making a decision that I was going to go to the gym at 4 a.m. when no one was there, so that I could have that part of my routine to help me get going. And it really, that one decision changed the next 4 weeks for me. I was able to really start to climb out of that depression, and my anxiety started to get under control. Exercise is like such a big part of controlling and making sure I'm mentally healthy, that it just deteriorated. And we made sure that no one was in there, and I did all the safety precautions that I could, which is why I was up so early to be inside of a gym. It's a gym inside of my apartment building that never closed. So yeah, I'm grateful I had some time to sit here and think, and to try to figure out what the future may look like for Conversations with MaryJane and for me. And I think one of my biggest thoughts that I had was, I want to find what makes me the most happy and what I'm really meant to do on this earth. And so that's what COVID has given me time to think about, or the things that I want to do with the platform that I have. It also gave me some time to dive deeper into the cannabis industry and some of the injustices that happen every single day. And so I learned about a man, Michael Thompson, and I've posted about him a lot. And I think, if you know me, I talk a lot about the power of story and how your story can change someone's life. And his story really changed mine. Michael is type 2 diabetic, which I am. Michael was arrested in, if I recall right, 1996 for selling 3 pounds of cannabis to an informant. And then then they found a gun with his girlfriend who was at home, not even the same location, and then found an antique gun in a safe. And they decided that they would pile all of those charges on top of it. And because of a habitual offender law, he got 42 to 60 years for 3 pounds of cannabis. And the Last Prisoner Project has been really championing his cause and getting the information out there. And when I read about it, my heart sank, because he's type 2 diabetic in prison with COVID. And here's what I know about people with type 2 diabetes. You're more susceptible to the worst parts of it. Our bodies don't react well to infections of any type. I have my diabetes way under control. And even when I get sick, I cannot control my blood sugar. Medicine makes it higher, not eating makes it too low. Like, it's a disaster. And as I read about his story, I remember the first weeks of COVID as things were shut down, and the hysteria I had thinking I could die, because I didn't want to die. Like, I finally feel like I know what I'm doing in life, and I now want to do all those things that I never did before. And it was a very dark place, but I was still sipping on my celery juice, drinking my, ginger and turmeric shots, smoking blunts, making sure I had everything I needed to keep me safe during this, while Michael sits in prison as a type 2 diabetic, and I can't imagine his fear. And I just, his story was the fire I needed to take this even further, to understand why we're in this position in the cannabis industry. How can we have me even making money? How can anybody make money off the cannabis industry while there are people still in jail where they committed victimless and nonviolent crimes? And so I thought a lot about that, and I spent a lot of time writing, and I did a lot of posts, and that desire and that burning hasn't gone away. In fact, it's only increased to understand more on how we can change this, because I'm not okay with that, and we need to help everyone in this position. But right now, Michael has a lot of attention, and so when we're trying to make change like this, I've realized there's like these 3 components, or 2 components really. One, we have to be loud, right? So Governor Whitmer, who's in Michigan, email her, tag her on social media, call the parole board, send as many emails as you can, use every trick that you can. I've now because on my email, you can write an email and then it sends at a later time. So on, I think it's Wednesday next week, I don't want to give this out because it may ruin it. But I have it set that every 15 minutes, they're going to get an email from me. So I'm just using technology to help me be as loud as possible for people to hear about Michael's story. And this can be about anything. And the next is to be consistent, right? And so that's where that setting up, the email to go out automatically over a certain period of time. I did a video about if everybody during a 420 moment just did an act of activism, how awesome would that be? And so that's something I've implemented is, around 420, that's when I send that email so that it's in my mind. And now my blunt session has even more purpose. It's not just to keep my anxiety down and to help keep me in a good place and maybe sometimes just to have fun. But now I'm trying to save someone's life. If you want to help Michael out, you can go to my IG profile or my Facebook profile, and I have scripts there that I've used and phone numbers that you can call, leave comments, like if you have other contacts that we should be reaching out to. But, hearing his story, I think we all sometimes hear that story that's like, that could be me. And I'm sitting here real comfy and cozy with COVID, and Michael should have never been in prison to begin with. But here he is, and now he needs to get out of jail. And here's what also I know. Governor Whitmer is on Joe Biden's list to be a vice president. And I'm not a political expert by any means, and I don't even understand how to unfuck what has happened here. However, Michigan made $32 million in the first 90 days of adult usage. They can get Michael out of jail, and they can get every person out of jail. There shouldn't be that much money. Maryland made $90 million in the first 90 days of 2020. And I think some people have posted about how much money's been made. We need to start changing things. People should not be in prison. There should not be anything on anyone's records about cannabis anymore. And people of color should no longer have cannabis weaponized against them. It's not fair. It's not right. We should be allowed to grow it. I mean, all of these things and all of these thoughts have really come to me over this time because I've been able to sit down and maybe stay off of social media enough to get out of the flashiness of the cannabis industry. And I'm not saying like I don't love a pretty nug shot anymore. I'm not saying I don't love all of those beautiful things about cannabis. I just don't love it right now because I don't find a lot of joy about cannabis knowing Michael's sitting in prison. And I've actually seen like a lot of sentiment from a lot of you saying you don't know what to post, cannabis influencers, people in the industry, because it doesn't really feel right. And it doesn't. And maybe there's fewer of us, but it is hard for me to say like, oh, and here's this perfectly wrapped blunt, which is never the case because mine are always flat. And here's this beautiful flower, and here's what I did with it. It just doesn't feel that right anymore. So with all of that on my mind, it has helped shift maybe what season 2 is all about for Conversations with MaryJane. And so I wanted to say a few things like I did at the start of this show as a reminder, and then share maybe what my new mission is, or maybe a better thing would be to say like a clarifying of what the mission is. So first of all, I'm going to fuck up. Like I've done it already in the first episode. I say someone's name wrong. You're going to hear me call it weed instead of cannabis sometimes. Like sometimes I just fuck up and I apologize. And I probably will even do it greater than first season. And I will always apologize and I will do everything in my power to make that right. But do you want to set that expectation? I'm like nowhere near perfect. And all my friends and family, and especially my wife, would let you know that. But the mission of Conversations with MaryJane, and I may look down because I just want to make sure I hit all these bullet points. So the entire mission, I think, since I got into the cannabis industry is like, let me help end the stigma of medical cannabis by providing beautiful stories. And if you hear stories, maybe then you're like, oh, that's not something illegal. That's not a drug. That's not bad, because that helps them. And so that's what I've always tried to do. However, I think stigma doesn't mean just that. To me now, I'm working to end the stigma, and stigma means until cannabis is not weaponized against people of color, until every last victimless or non-victim or non-violent prisoner is out of jail, till automatic expungements happen, till you don't have to waste $1 to get that cannabis charge off of your record because they just take it off because they're making millions off of it. It is until every white-owned cannabis company shows true diversity. And I'm talking not just a token. I want true diversity in their business, in their thought, in their marketing, in all of those things. Not just putting up a black square once and not saying shit about shit anymore. It's until this market and every market is not profit over patients. And I want to be very clear. I'm all for an adult usage market and charge as much as you want. But when we're talking about people who have medical needs, there should be no way that it should ever be as expensive as it is for them to get amazing medicine. I know you can get inexpensive cannabis. Sure. Does it work the same? No, not always. And so until we stop marketing it like it is just a commodity and not a life-saving medicine for some people, and something that makes my life so much easier to live and makes everyone around me, like, maybe it is life-saving for me too. It's probably life-saving for all of us when we start to think about it. Until the cannabis industry is a true reflection of what the cannabis community is, I will fight stigma. It's not just about a mom being able to give her child cannabis for epilepsy. Yeah, that's a huge part of it. But if we work so hard on that, we're going to forget all this other stuff that makes this a level playing field, makes this equal and fair for everybody who built this from the time it was illegal till the time now. Until we do that, it can't be a great industry. It's always going to feel a little like not the cannabis community, because how can you have someone sit in jail with type 2 diabetes who could die faster than anyone else who's sitting in jail because they don't have type 2 diabetes, who is doing the same exact thing as you? That blows my mind. And we are not a true industry until we correct those wrongs. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on. And yeah, sure, I'm going to tell stories of how cannabis helps people and how it affects them on a daily basis, so that we can teach people that it is a good plant. But you're going to see a lot of focus on the injustices and me talking about it more until we get it right. Because I was lucky to find cannabis even as late in life as I did. And I'm so thankful that I can just go to the store and buy it. However, I cannot sit here and make money off of this until we fix the problems that occurred because of the drug policies in the United States, because of the way that the system feels about Black people. I can't sit here and just talk about beautiful nug shots anymore. I have to talk about these things. And so I hope that you come with me on this ride as we learn more, to do more, to save a community that is so bright and so brilliant. And I talk about it all the time, that this community truly did save my life. Meeting the individuals that I've met, the first time I was at an event and someone made me feel safe and secure because I consumed weed, who made me feel like I wasn't an oddball anymore. I've always felt out of place, always, until 2 moments in life. The first time I walked into a gay club, and the first time I walked into an event with the cannabis community, and I knew I had found my people. And I will work hard to make sure that we have a community that reflects that. And I'm very thankful that I get to be a part of it. I'm also thankful for some businesses who really stepped up in a big way when 2 weeks ago, I was part of a coalition that put on the Queers for Black Lives Matters March. And my job was to get money. And I said, well, let me go to the place that I know. And the cannabis industry sent a ton of emails and want to acknowledge the people who did donate, who did support this. And I want to give a little bit of a background about how it happened so that you can kind of understand. So I emailed these individuals and basically was like, I need money to do this. This is what we're going to do. We're paying every Black artist and Black speaker. We want to make sure it's safe. We just had things we needed to purchase. And I would love it if you could support it, but here's how it's different. So my entire career in really ever has been advertising. And so how the podcast works is I have a sponsor of the show, they give me money, and then I talk about them. And that's how you get sponsors, right? They get to be a part of it. Well, what I told these individuals was, I would like to take money from you, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it. You're not going to have your logo on anything. It's not going to be like, so-and-so brought to you the Queers for Black Lives Matter March. There was none of that. It was, if you believe in this, you will, and if you have it, you'll donate. And these individuals stepped up, and I wanted to take a moment because they won't say it, and we definitely didn't put them as sponsors, but so that you could know in the cannabis community, people are giving back. And so these individuals helped with financial contributions to the Queers for Black Lives Matters March. And so Pure Life Wellness, Evermore, Peake ReLeaf, Southern Maryland ReLeaf, Elizabeth Lunt, Tracey Sklar, my cousin Catherine Parker. Her name was just on there. She's not in the cannabis industry, but thank you, Catherine, for giving that. Starbuds and Dave Tart. And if I missed anyone, I promise I'll say it on the next one. But because of you, these donations covered every single expense that we had on the protest. And we had a GoFundMe that was put out to the public to help raise money for the protest as well. And because of what these individuals did, that protest was covered by the cannabis community. We were able to donate every dollar less the GoFundMe charges to Safe Haven, which is an organization in Baltimore that helps the trans community. And man, for us to almost give them $6,000 because each of you who I just mentioned stepped up is fantastic. And those are the things that we can do as the cannabis community. It's not just about cannabis. We're about people. And that's what we can do with all of these. I know it takes money to run a business, so I know you're not raking in millions every day, but millions. We can do a lot to change people's lives. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you from Derek and Zen and Rachel and Jazz, who are also in the coalition, for doing that for us. And I appreciate you doing it in a manner that was top secret until now. So thank you. So now that I've spoken a long time, welcome to season 2. We have our first interview. It is Tracey Lancaster of Peake ReLeaf. She is also the president of the MDMDA. You will find out, I really don't know how to say that, and the executive vice president of Peake ReLeaf. I adore Tracey. She is a powerful woman, and she has a passion, as her whole team does, to help make the cannabis industry better. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Welcome, Tracey. So we can just kind of like hop, there's no like real big intro or anything. I'm excited to chat with you today, just really to get your perspective on everything that's happening and, you know, kind of what your experience has been with, and I'm going to mess up this acronym. So what are you the president of? Because I'm about to say something wrong.
It's the MDMDA.
I forget that middle D.
Dispensary Association.
Yeah, I always get that wrong. And just to hear like an update on that. So I guess we can start with that. Like, when did you become the president?
So I took over the position of president in February, in the beginning of February. So the MDA started, was like founded at the very beginning of the industry, and there's several board members who were the founders of that, and our president, after basically like 3 years of service to the association, had to take a step back. And so I had been on the board for the last, at that point it was 2.5 years, and so I stepped into that role as president right in the beginning of February. So I had about a month of normalcy and then COVID hit, and so it's been interesting to take over the position, midterm is always an interesting adjustment to do that. And then also to do it right as COVID was happening was another interesting part of my experience so far.
So for people who don't know what the organization does, what is the mission of the MDMDA? Did I do it right?
Yes. So MDMDA is it's Maryland's only trade association that represents the interests of dispensaries. So there are two trade associations in the state of Maryland right now. One is the Grower and Processor Association, and one is the Dispensary Association. And so if you operate a dispensary, you are probably a member of the MDMDA. We have the majority of the licensees in the organization. And what we do is advocate for laws and regulations that foster like a professional and secure medical cannabis industry here in Maryland. So we're really involved in Annapolis. We have a lobbyist who works really closely monitoring legislation out there in Annapolis. And then we also work with the MMCC about any, regulatory changes that may come down the line. And all of these things could either affect licensees like dispensaries. We also make sure that we are paying attention to what is going on for patient access as well. So like in the last legislative session, there were a number of patients' rights bills that were being debated, and then several of them eventually passed, including the school bills, minors to medicate on school grounds if they have a certification, and also adding physician's assistants to the certifying providers list. So those kinds of legislation we are very supportive of. We want to make sure that we are increasing access in Maryland as well.
That's awesome. So and this was founded like right at the beginning when everyone kind of opened up, or did it evolve like kind of as the industry opened up?
So trying to remember years now because all the years run
It's a blur.
together. But 2017 was the year that the first grows were opening. Yeah, so 2017 that
awesome.
MDMDA was founded in. I believe it was around this time of year. So it's been just about 3 years of operation now. And one of the things that we strive to do too is to kind of be a forum of exchange of information for the community, and also to provide education to those who don't know about the cannabis industry, to help provide that information for either medical cannabis patients or communities or law enforcement, anything like that.
That's what was, I think you mentioned it like at the beginning when you took it over and then COVID hit. How did that, what were challenges you faced in your new role? And then just as dispensaries as a whole to keep access to patients, what was that like?
It was a really intense period. I mean, it was an intense period for everyone, because we're all going through the same thing. We're all going through COVID, shutting down. What I was really focused on was making sure that as an association, we were disseminating information in a timely and accurate manner, not just to our members, but to everyone who is on our email list and the larger community. Because it was really important that information got out, what you can do in certain areas of the state, because one of the things is that the different jurisdictions have different rules as well. And so while the state may have said one thing, there are localities that would put out ordinances that would be more strict. And so dispensaries were having to navigate not only making sure that they're in compliance with the state, but also making sure that they're in compliance with potentially stricter ordinances in their own cities or counties. And so at Peake ReLeaf, we're in Montgomery County, and Montgomery County in general, the trend of the different ordinances that came out in Montgomery County was things were a little stricter, where we, so, everyone's adhering to mask rules, but the mask rolls came down sooner in Montgomery County than in other places, and were more wider reaching on where you had to be wearing masks. So that's kind of one example of the information that we were really trying to put out. And also, you know, when COVID first hit, it was very unclear if dispensaries were going to be allowed to stay open. So there was a lot of concern that dispensaries may have to shut down. What would patients do in that case if we did have to shut down, even if it's for short periods of time? So there was a lot of communication that I had to have with members, and then disseminating information, lots of conversations with the MMCC and just local legislators as well.
I mean, just from my own personal perspective, I had that fear. And so on the day when, you know, you kind of felt like, oh, and I was in Baltimore City. So I think we kind of followed very similar to Montgomery County. Like, things have been slower to open back up here. But I immediately was like, I need to check my allotment and figure out what a game plan is for this. Because if it did shut down, man, that would, and I use it for anxiety. I need it now more than ever. And so just from a patient's perspective, I think that was like one of the like scarier things to have to try to navigate, is you've become very used to having access to a medicine, and then to have that fear that it may go away. So I appreciate that like back end work that you guys did. How is it managing like the fears of employees? Like, I think maybe we've not like recognized as the patient side of things, kind of the trauma and the scariness it was to go to work every day when there's a pandemic.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, what we did at Peake ReLeaf, when it became clear that, you know, things were starting to take a turn for the worse, that things were going to be starting to shut down, and, you know, you always knew that it was serious, but when it became apparent that this is going to disrupt daily life, we had one-on-one sit-downs with every single one of our staff members and talked to them about how they feel. Like, do you want to take some time away from the store? Do you want to drop down from full-time to part-time? Or, you know, do you want to take a leave of absence? Is there any practices that we could institute that would make you feel more comfortable? You know, we created an action plan, which, you know, some of the main things that we did to kind of change operations to keep our staff safe as well as keeping patients safe was limiting the number of people in the building and offering curbside pickup and requiring masks. Those are kind of the three big things that we did, in addition to, you know, cleaning procedures and a lot of other stuff like that. But really having a really open and honest dialogue with our staff about, these are the things that we're doing. These are the recommendations from the CDC, the MMCC, the Maryland Department of Health. Is there anything additional that you would want to see from us?
Yeah.
I think that dialogue with our staff was really helpful to make sure that we incorporated practices that were keeping everyone comfortable and giving our staff the flexibility to those who wanted to take some time or to drop back to part-time status, less shifts a week, were able to do so.
That's awesome. I think in our conversations over the past 2 years, I think that's the thing that I have appreciated the most, is how you guys treat your employees and how you have designed what I feel like from an outsider is not a job that's been made where people aren't getting paid, they have benefits. Like, this is, I feel like you guys take it like a career and you're treating your employees as such. And there is a drastic difference, I feel like, when you build a team like that and you're willing to have conversations and say, like, what do you need from us at this time? Because I know for a fact, because I heard from employees, like from other places, how scared they were to go into work and how it was really never addressed. Like, you know, it's just kind of like, well, at least you get to come to work, was a little bit of the thought process. And I think that's like something I always talk about Peake ReLeaf is like, you guys really do treat your employees, I think, very well and consider them in all aspects of this, which is why I think outward facing, you guys do the things that you do because you're kind of just good to your core. There's not like, you're just good people. So it shows when you treat people good, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, our staff they are, you know, like I might be the executive vice president, but I'm not the one that people see when they come into the dispensary every day. And so our staff are so important to our operation. It's really important that you listen to your staff, that you address their concerns, that you know, they're the ones who are doing the job every day of interacting with the patients. And so if they have an idea of something that's going to make workflow better or something that's going to be better for the patients, you should always listen to that because they're the ones who are doing the job. And so that's kind of how we always look at it. You know, I've personally worked for companies in the past that haven't been like that. And so a major goal for us, me and my two business partners, Nate and Warren, has been to create a company that shows respect for our employees and that we show that at all possible levels that you could.
I mean, that's perfect. Tell me, and this discussion kind of happened, like, what was the first Peake ReLeaf discussion with you, Nate, and Warren? Like, how did this dream come apart? Like, what was that moment where you were like, yeah, we're going to do this?
So, it was actually at Nate and my wedding.
I love this story already.
So we had a wedding where you could camp after the reception. So there were a lot of people hanging around a campfire. And it was kind of after all the formalities of like, okay, the photographer's gone. We can all kind of actually enjoy the rest of the evening. And we began talking about it. I mean, we had other conversations about it, you know, over several months prior, because this is 2014. But this was the first one that we were like, this is serious. Like, we can do this. Nate and I have the skills from Colorado's industry. Warren has the business skills and the hospitality skills from his restaurant management. We have a lifetime of connections that the three of us together can put together to build a really strong team and build a company with the ethics that we have always wanted to work for.
Yeah. How do you stay focused on those ethics? So here's what my perspective is, and I don't follow everybody and I don't want to be a captain call out, but I think you as a team have really doubled down on helping the cannabis industry make good on what has just been a racial injustice forever and ever. And so how do you guys stay focused on that, especially in business when, I mean, you guys have a Black Lives Matter sign in your store, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure not everyone's cheering as they see that. Mm-hmm. So how do you guys handle that? Like, how do you stay focused, keeping your business ethics and doing what's good for the business, but also building a company that's like socially aware and doing the right thing?
So with the Black Lives Matter sign in particular, we've gotten more support on that than not. Yeah. So that's kind of what I like to focus on, you know. But what we did with that is, you know, the conversations for anyone about social justice and equality can be draining over time. And what we didn't want to do was to put up a sign and then have it be on our staff who is patient facing to be forced to have those conversations.
Yep.
They may want to have those conversations, but ultimately it's their choice. And so what we did was we put up a response to the Black Lives Matter sign on our website. So
I just read it this morning.
Emotionally drained, you know, from having these kind of conversations can just say, we have a lot of resources on our website. I would direct you to the About Us section of our website.
Yeah.
So really trying to keep in mind how these conversations can affect all of our staff, you know, as we as a company are taking a stance. So yeah, and then, just kind of focusing in on our ethics for us, what's really important is, I think that there is some element of superficial kind of advocacy that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really focused on is trying to make sure that what we're doing isn't superficial, that it isn't performative, that it is genuine. And so in that regard, everything that we're doing, it's a lot about, okay, well, we can talk about this, but what also are we doing about this? And so in that regard, we made sure we've been open for just over two years now. So making sure that we are members of different organizations that promote social justice and social equity. So, we've been for years members of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, the Minority Cannabis Business Association, as well as Drug Policy Alliance, Americans for Safe Access, like pretty much all of the major marijuana advocacy groups like you could be a part of. We make sure to be a part of those.
Yeah.
And what we've been doing a lot recently has been using our platforms that we have, our social media channels, our newsletter, to really center the conversations on Black and Brown voices and organizations, to really show what are doing. And we're always trying to make sure, you can focus on externally, like your advocacy, which is a really big thing for us. And you can focus on policy, but you have to make sure that you're focusing internally too on how you are accomplishing those kind of goals for social justice and social equity within your own organization as well. Yeah. And so with us, we've always really tried to make sure, in addition to giving our employees a voice, we really hire with intentionality. And we've always told our employees from the very first hires that we did way back in 2017, 2018, that we believe in promoting from within. And the employees that we have now, these are the employees that we really see as building a larger organization over time. And these are the individuals who are going to be the leaders in our organizations. And how can I continue to provide them the skills that they need to be those leaders in the future? And I would love that to be with me, but if that is with someone else too, I want the best for all of my staff. I want them to have opportunities for professional development. And so that's one of the things that's important.
I mean, I amen to all of that. I think that your vision, a lot of times, and having built business, you have these great employees, and sometimes you want to keep them to yourself, and you develop them in a way that maybe they don't ever leave. But your vision to make the cannabis industry better by making them better now is, I think, so important to what the cannabis industry is about. In your opinion, do you think that the cannabis industry is doing enough to help with the drug policies that have put Black and Brown people in jail? Are they advocating enough to change this?
I think that there is so much more to be done.
Yeah.
I think that what we have seen in the last couple of years is that there are more organizations that are participating in that, but I'm not sure that it's the majority, and it's definitely not where it needs to be. And so for me, it's really important to be the antithesis of that. I want to be the exception. I want to be the company that's actually not only saying the things that everyone should be saying, but actually doing the things that we should be doing too, and not just outwardly, but inwardly as well.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I would say it is probably less on the side you are, but I even think the environment today has allowed people who haven't really taken a stand because they feel in business, you have to be diplomatic, or we don't talk about, not that race is a politics issue, but, we don't talk about race or religion or politics. And I think it's allowed people to find a voice and to start to use it. But my biggest fear is, like you mentioned, performative stuff, right? Like, it is exhausting to have these conversations. It is. And so in 7 more days, will people still have this level of, I want to make a change. I want to keep this like ball rolling. So you do a great job to like remind everyone. Every day I look at your social media and I'm just like so happy with the things that I see, because it also just provides a lot of education for me as like a white person, right? Like, we should all be drinking from a fire hose and learning as much as we can for things that maybe we didn't even know about history, because we were taught in a system that was a little more white-centered, with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, shout out to Kevin, because Kevin is our director.
He is the man.
Does all that's on social media. He is amazing.
Does he do all the graphics too?
Yes.
What? He is great.
He's amazing.
Yeah, that is. I did not know that. Now that just takes his greatness like up a notch, because it's all very coordinated. Like, I appreciate from like a marketing standpoint, it all looks and flows so well together that it doesn't, it's almost like a journey for the person to read it. It's not like, it's just done well. Way to go, Kevin. So we've had like a crazy 90 days. What, is a silver lining for you? What's something that you learned or something that you look at and you're just like, man, this would have never happened if all of this other stuff, starting with COVID, has not happened? And you can think a second, because that's a big question.
Well, I think one of the silver linings for us at Peake ReLeaf has been, this has really given us the opportunity to get really reflective in many different ways. Reflective on, business practices that are working or not working. Like for me personally, getting to incorporate a work from home day a week or more has been really great for me to be able to do some of the more administrative stuff that I personally need to get done every day. And it's really given us an opportunity to engage with our staff. Like, we've always had a very open door policy, but it's become a very, intentional, like, let's make sure we're checking in. Let's make sure we're still feeling comfortable. If someone's not feeling comfortable, what can we do to make them feel comfortable? So I think just being able to reflect on where we are as a business and where we want to go, that's been a little bit of a silver lining too.
Yeah, I feel like more connected to humans despite being so distant. I think because what you said, it allowed you to go deeper with people because you had the time. And I feel that, always moving on to the next thing, where I didn't have a lot of next things. So I could be very present in the moment. And I appreciate that too, what it's done to like even understand people in my sphere a little bit better and to have grace with them. Everyone's struggling in their own manner in everything. And so for me, who is very quick to judge, to take a moment and just be like, man, they could just be having a shit day and I just need to be okay with what just happened. It has like changed my perspective quite a bit. What are you most hopeful for right now?
Well, I think that one of the, I guess to kind of tie it into the silver linings too, what I'm hopeful about is that one of the silver linings that we did get out of COVID was dispensaries across the nation, individually, state by state, being designated as essential. And what I'm very hopeful about is that I feel like it's impossible to walk back from that statement now.
Yeah.
And I know that it's felt for a long time like we've already gotten to a space in the cannabis industry where, so many dominoes have fallen that they're going to continue to fall. But I think that this is really something that can just continue to accelerate those dominoes of like, okay, if this is an essential medicine for people in Maryland, why is it not in, the states that don't have medical cannabis? And what I'm hopeful for is that we can continue to push access across the nation, and get access to people who are still in states that, there's still states where it's not even decriminalized, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That is still the case.
I think that was probably my favorite moment too. When you heard, I think all of us were like, some validation for all the hard work. Like, man, in this moment, it's a big deal. And I think you're right. It helps with that. And I think it even helps with, getting people out of jail who shouldn't be in jail because they have nonviolent cannabis charges. Like, it just validates a lot of it to say, during a time when we told you to stay home, you could leave to get your cannabis. And I think that's just, cheers heard across the United States with just that one statement. So what do you think the future of Maryland cannabis looks like? And we'll end on this note unless you have anything else you want to talk about. But do you think that we're going to see rec soon? What do you think about home grow? Like, if you had a crystal ball that is green, what does it look like?
So in terms of like the medical program, we have rules regulations coming down the line very soon. They were a little slower coming out partially due to COVID, I believe, as well. So in terms of the medical program, I'm really excited to see the expansion to edibles, because then I feel like say that we have a truly robust and comprehensive medical cannabis program. I know we have consumable type products, but it's not the same.
Not the same. Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that. I feel like that kind of elevates Maryland's medical market into what it should have been to begin with. And then looking into the future, we are definitely going to see adult use legislation introduced in the 2021 legislative session. And I am incredibly hopeful that it will get passed in 2021. It's a little difficult to say. I believe from, the work that we've done with the MDMDA and our lobbyists in Annapolis and coordinating with other advocates in the community, I believe that adult use is going to be something.
I mean, I was even thinking with the pandemic and the amount of money that's come out of like the Maryland budgets, man, this would be a perfect time to introduce a new tax industry for Maryland to do, right? Like, not that anyone wants it taxed, but when you think of like, I'm sure strategy when bills are getting passed, man, this is a good idea. Like, it could really help the economy. I mean, I've been following Michigan's legalization very closely because of the Last Prisoner Project and Michael Thompson, and his story, because he's diabetic, really resonated with my diabetic ass during COVID. And I couldn't believe, like, in the first 90 days, they made $32 million. And that came in, I was like, that benefits everything. When we start to see that type, we just need to build systems that work and pay back for what was taken from people of color who really did this for far longer than we did. Anything you want to add, Tracey?
No, I don't think so.
No? Well, from the bottom of my heart, I want to just give a lot of appreciation to you and the entire Peake ReLeaf team, because you guys do stand on the right side a lot. I appreciate you. And I don't know if this podcast will drop before or after the Queers for Black Lives Matters March, but you've been a participant in that and just really helping to end the stigma. And so I know from 2 years worth of experience that what you say is actually true. And you do stand by those things. And there's nothing performative about Peake ReLeaf and who you are as a company. So I appreciate your example. That's why I wanted to have you on the first episode of season 2, because my eyes have been very opened to just the world in general the last 90 days, as I'm sure a lot of people's are. So I appreciate all that you and Nate and Warren and Kevin are doing for Maryland cannabis.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you as well and everything that you've done.
Oh, well, thanks.